Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming at you live from episode 51 of Life on the Rocks with your host, Connor LaRocque. Today's featured guest in the hot seat is my friend, Mr. Jamie West. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks, Connor.
Oh, anytime. It's an absolute pleasure to have Jamie on the show this afternoon. For anybody in the city or greater community of Sudbury that doesn't know Jamie West, he's actually our NDP candidate for the city of Sudbury. He also is a health and safety rep at Valet. So the first question I always like to ask, what got you started as a health and safety rep at Valet?
I had an incident, so nobody was injured in it, but I had a hot metal incident. We had a big spill and we ended up shutting down production for almost 3 days, so 2.5 days. And there were a bunch of small errors that were made. I was new at my job. A bunch of things we could have done. And so we did an investigation through the workplace, and it became insufficient training. And it was sort of we wouldn't catch everything, and so we could duplicate this and have it again. So I just asked, can I get involved with safety? And it was basically, back then you could just put up your hand and get involved, right?
Oh, wow.
And so that was 16 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
And then I was a member of the Health and Safety Committee, and then about 8 years ago I became one of the executive members of the Health and Safety Committee for the Ontario Division. And about 5 years ago I became the worker safety rep, so safety became a full-time job.
Okay, that's great. And so you're managing a big team. I mean, you probably operate with a number of different people you have to go speak with in your work.
Yeah, it's a big, so in my area there's 400 employees in total in the section that I have, and so we have 20 worker side of the committee members and about 15 management side, so we typically work with managers and superintendents and supervisors as well, but in terms of the committee when we have our meetings. And then I'm also with the executive. There's 5 people from the union side, and there's 5 general managers, and we meet once a month to just talk about divisionally where we're going.
Do you find it hard to come to equal terms with a lot of these people? If you're dealing with a number of different people in a big workforce, is it hard to kind of find an equal playing field for everybody?
No, you know what? We've been doing health and safety at Valley. It was INCO back in the day, but we've been doing it actually before the Occupational Health and Safety Act was invented. We had it in our agreement that we're going to have health and safety committees. So in Ontario, they say Joint Health and Safety Committee, and we say OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Environment Committee, because that was the term we came up with before the law was around. So it hasn't always worked really well. There's been some of this in the past,
yeah.
but we really understand health and safety well and work really well together.
Well, especially working in the mines too. There is, obviously some types of risks, so you got to make sure you're kind of prepared for that. Are you underground?
No, I'm a surface guy.
So you're the service manager. Okay, that probably makes it a lot easier in the morning. You don't have to go all the way down for an hour, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have cage times. It's easier for me to get on the workforce and stuff. But the area is huge. It's a really large area. So mine starts at the filter plant where when the muck comes to surface, they basically make it into this almost like a powder, like a wet mud almost, right?
Okay,
so the filter plant will kind of make it a thicker mud, and then the furnaces, they dry it and they basically turn it into lava. We call it matte and slag. So on the postcards where you see the slag being done, we do that at the smelter. And that's basically the waste rock, and the valuable stuff sinks to the bottom, and that goes through the process to the converter aisles and casting and crushing and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I find that super interesting.
Yeah.
And you're also, so people might not know this already, you're also a sessional teacher at Laurentian University.
Yeah.
So how often do you do that? So that's obviously sessional, so you get called in once in a while.
It's second and third year health and safety. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was they had a professor who was doing it for years and years, and he had to get knee surgery. And so they put out a contract, and I applied, and I was successful on it. And so I took over for 1 year, and then basically he decided to retire. He had plans to retire in the future anyways, and so I was doing the second and third year classes for health and safety, and it was a good opportunity to kind of update it and revamp it, because the style they had before was sort of scattershot, like all these different aspects of it. And so what I was thinking is if I took a course in health and safety after doing it all these years and all the other training I had and experiences I've had, what would I want from it? And it was, I want someone at my company to hit the ground running in terms of health and safety. Like I talked about when I joined, it was basically put your hand up. Well, now people want people with a certificate. They want someone with,
for sure.
You can still join. Anyone can join any workplace, but more and more they're looking for some background. So I just changed the format of the training and some of the courses to how to be effective, how to understand the act, how to interpret the legislation, how to look for root causes, because the reason I got involved was we missed those root causes. It was just it was unlucky that day.
Yeah.
Or it was where there were things. There were things that in my training, I could have done better. There were things that because I was new, I didn't want to ask for help earlier, or I wasn't clear when I asked for help. I more or less said I'm having a hard time keeping up, or I should have said I need help.
No kidding,
And so you want to find, there's a whole thing called the Swiss cheese model, where there's all these layers that you put in, like, your personal protection, like your clothing, training, rules that you have at work, and there's all these tiny holes, and if they line up, then you have an event, right? So it's about plugging those holes, right?
Yeah, making sure kind of fill the void, especially from someone that was firsthand in the field. So I mean, you could see the holes firsthand.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier when you're kind of building your courses, and you're like, and then someone questions you, and you're like, well, no, I've been in the field for 16 different years, right?
Yeah. We built I built an investigation training package, like just kind of hit the ground running. We run it in about 4 hours, and then recently we adopted it at Valet to talk to people about health and safety and get to those root causes, because if all you think of is, hey, next time you should be more careful, right? Then eventually someone's not going to be more careful in the future, right? So if you can eliminate things from happening completely, then it's a lot better. So it's a real fun exercise. It has a video that plays, and you kind of get to the end results, and we're having a lot of fun with it right now. I trialed it out at Laurentian, and we have a version style of it that we used for Valet that's actually rolling out right now. People are getting the training on right now. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, that's huge too, especially working hand in hand with Valet. Like I said, you're working in the field, and you get to kind of go apply that with different students, see if they like it or not, if it works.
Yeah.
And obviously it does, so that's a big thing. So I want to transition here for a second. So we talked about you being a sessional teacher, and then obviously doing the health and safety.
Right.
What got you going into politics? Like, this is your first run. Like, what made you want to go and say, hey, I want to be a politician?
So it started actually as a Valet employee. I was in strike in 2009, right? And so what you notice over time, this is a year long, was that the only party to show up, the only party to walk a picket line or talk to us or ask us why we're on strike or get involved in any way was the NDP. Mm-hmm. The other parties were invisible, and we actually went down to other parties' offices to talk to them, and they wouldn't make time for us, and wouldn't be there, and it was frustrating.
I can imagine.
So I grew up relatively poor. I grew up in Sudbury housing. And so I was raised, someone helps you move, you got to help them move. So after the strike was over, there was an election, and I showed up to help, put signs up or knock on doors or handle flyers or whatever it was. And so I've been volunteering on different campaigns, every year since. Mm-hmm. And then so in my head, I was thinking, well, my kids get older, maybe I'll run, maybe I'll look at this.
Absolutely.
Because it's interesting. I was always the guy who read the paper and followed politics, that kind of thing. So what happened was last winter when we those hospital workers, there are hospital workers at Laurentian, right? So you have Laurentian Hospital, or Health Science North, sorry, and then on Regent Street you have the hospital facilities, and they decided they were going to close it down and ship the laundry down to Mohawk outside of Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And so it really didn't strike a chord for a lot of people. Like, there was a really high percentage of people in Sudbury who were against this, didn't understand why this made sense, the math didn't make sense, all that stuff. And you had about 38 people losing their job out of it. And these are good jobs. These are career jobs for people. They're hard work, but they pay well.
No, absolutely.
And that's what drives your economy. If people have extra money in their pocket, they can buy stuff, right? And that's what keeps businesses going. So I was trying to help out and get involved with that and talk to those workers. There were some people who contacted me, they wanted petitions, so I helped this lady write a petition because she didn't know where to start with that. And then ultimately they were unsuccessful, and they were closing the laundry service. And so I was there on the last day, and they just started gathering outside to watch the last truck leave and everything. And there are all these ladies outside and people from the community who are supporters and stuff. And so they asked for the head of their union to say a couple of words, and she talked about going to see our local NDP, and that he said that he wasn't sure there's anything he can do, but it wasn't really a priority for him anyways. And she said, I felt like the only reason we were there was so that if reporters came, he could say, oh yes, I met with those workers, I spoke with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? But she felt really frustrated about it. And so they were just asking people if they wanted to talk. And someone asked me, want to say something? And I said, I wasn't thinking of running at the time, but I said, if you have leadership that's not representing you, then you need to vote them out.
Totally.
Right? And I don't like that on my skin, but I was really upset about the whole thing. And I was thinking, like, why isn't he even here? Like, he should be here. He should. I think most people can understand you fight and you lose, right? Like you don't want to lose, but you give it your all, and at the end of the day, you're not successful. You don't walk away with your head up. But I think if you don't fight, it's really frustrating. That really got under my skin. And so across the road from us, because we're kind of in the roadway as the transport was leaving, across the road from me was Frangel, and I was thinking Sudbury needs a Frangel. And then just like through the rest of the week, I was like, I'm going to be the Frangel at Sudbury.
There it is.
Like we need someone who's hardworking, who's always there, who shows up and does everything. Because honestly, the guy we have now is invisible. I mean, he's all over the place now with these giant checks dropping money, but you can't find him through the year. You can't get answers from him, and it's, I'm not trying to beat up him in this election season.
No, 100%, no.
But that's the frustration. If you talk to people in town, they'll tell you the same thing, right?
So true.
So,
I mean, it's one of those things too, you want to have a voice if you're going to say something, right? You want to actually feel like you've been heard, and that at least you're trying to make a consistent effort, like you said. And it's one of those things, that's why I actually respect you going out and saying, you know what, that was the breakthrough moment. You're like, it's time for me to run and create change. And I've always lived by the mentality, if no one else is creating change, you might as well try to stir something up and create change yourself. How difficult was it for you though, like when you made that decision, juggling your jobs and different things to go out and say, I'm going to start knocking doors, I'm going to go run, promote myself. Like how difficult is that?
It was, well, first it was a long conversation with my wife because
How to make sure.
So she works as a teacher, so she's busy as well. And we have 3 kids, and there's a lot of juggling and driving around and stuff. And like they're all teenagers, right? So they all have like their own life going on and things like that. My daughter dances, and so that's pretty time consuming because she's got to get to dance 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And so we had a long talk about what do you think? And then once. It took her about a month to get on board because I said, I don't want to win this and lose you, right?
Yeah.
This isn't the priority. I want to make sure that we all agree on this. And so then she agreed to it, and then we asked the kids, and we kind of like set up like a pizza night and everything. And then, what do you guys think of it? And they're like, yeah, sure. Yeah, it was like, it was up here for us, but then it was like, you're down here.
Exactly.
If you want to do that, Dad, go ahead.
He's like, oh, that's good. We'll see you on social media and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's not too bad. How do you deal? So I mean, obviously, there's different parties and different things. How do you deal with the criticism maybe associated with being a politician? So if you're coming out and you're like, I'm taking a stance, like obviously putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that criticism?
I think you slowly build rhino skin. You just
absolutely.
I get used to people would say something and I would feel sad.
Exactly.
And then after a while, you just know like something with the beauty of social media is everyone can have an opinion.
Exactly.
And the downside is that people can just like pound on you. Right, and that's just what it is, and you have to take it with a grain of salt. And there's, I find genuine criticism is more effective than someone who just is a cheap shot or whatever. And I'm not saying it's a cheap shot. It's just like if someone's angry and they write something quickly. Mm-hmm. But if it's a real I'm disappointed because of this, and here's what my values are, that sinks in a lot more than someone just going.
Impulse.
You know what I mean? Like you're all idiots or whatever.
It's like, oh, thank you. You know what I mean? It's like, well, actually, come in with very thought out kind of opinion on it. Especially, so what made you choose, where your values line up with the NDP party? Like, what made you say this is it? They were the ones that showed up at that event at the one time.
That's kind of that's what cemented it, right? So it was one of those, I'd go and vote and felt like I was participating in elections, and I'd follow the news and stuff. But really, the NDP are a workers' party, right? Their focus is on average people at home trying to make a living, small businesses. Right, we're doing okay with large corporations. We've been funneling and tax crediting these large. I'm talking about multi-million-dollar corporations. We've been doing trickle-down economics since the days of Reagan. So that's 3/4 of my life. All we're seeing is a wealth transfer, and we're seeing average families, small businesses. Small businesses are having an incredible difficult time to compete. And families, every time we tighten our belt, it feels like this corporation gets to loosen theirs. Even lately, I saw Ford in the news talking about his taxes. We're going to lower corporate tax cuts, and it's going to help small businesses. Either he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's trying to pull the wool over our eyes, because corporate tax cuts started at $1 million. So he's talking about bringing their tax rates down. Ontario's already has the lowest corporate tax rates in Canada. Small businesses are actually almost 10% lower than that. So them lowering the corporate tax isn't going to help a small business. Maybe it's going to get more difficult for them because their margins are already so tight because they don't have the massive purchasing power and stuff. Right? So anyway, so the NDP, it was a perfect fit for me. I've been involved with a lot of things. So I was out, it's almost 3 years ago now, but with Hydro One, stopping to sell Hydro One, I was knocking on doors and canvassing and speaking at town halls and libraries and stuff about why we shouldn't be privatizing Hydro One, for at least 2 years already. So, the NDP party is the only party talking about bringing back the public hands, right?
So
That you,
true. Yeah.
that money that, I mean, if I was a corporation looking at buying shares for that, absolutely I would want to buy shares because it's a money maker.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, first, you don't need this much profit when it's publicly owned, right? You only need enough to be sustainable. And the money that was coming back was going into our roads and schools and hospitals and all the things we've seen crumbling.
Yeah.
You can't give that away to somebody for a short-term windfall, right?
It's so true.
So, and the other part too that frustrates me is we own that. So we all, as citizens in Ontario, own hydro, own our healthcare system, own 407, which Mike Harris privatized years and years ago. When we sell that stuff off and we give it away, that money has to come from somewhere. So we end up raising property taxes, we end up raising all our other taxes, or we end up with crumbling infrastructure. And you can't have that, right? And that, I think, is what makes people frustrated. A lot of people talk about being angry at their taxes. You know, and there is a sense of frustration on having to pay tax, but it's when you see that you're not getting anything for it. So when when you pay property tax, federal tax, we're just finishing tax season right now, you do all that stuff and you go to the hospital and you wait 3 hours, right? If you're lucky,
Yeah.
right? Or you spend a couple days in the hallway because there's no room for you. That's when you get fed up with
That's
paying
when you
taxes,
see it, yeah.
right? It's like, what am I getting for this?
Exactly. It's not logical anymore. It comes to an
Yeah.
emotional level, and I guess that's. Are these? So, what are some of the main things you want to attack when you first come out? Like, if you were to get elected, like, what are some of the main things you want to start with? Obviously, the hospitals. Like, what are some other things you would like to try?
I think the hospital. Off the top of my head, I would say the hospitals are a priority. A friend of mine ended up in the hospital. You hear about in the news stuff, but a friend of mine ended up in the hospital. She spent 2 days in the hallway, and then a day and a half in not a washroom because it sounds worse than it is. It was a bathing room. They have a big giant tub. They bring them in. So, aside from maybe the dignity, but just that uncomfortableness is when you finally get into a room, the people in the hallways are now using your bathroom. So they're interrupting your sleep and your rest and stuff. And if you're in the hospital, you're not in good condition, right?
No kidding.
Plus, whatever illnesses they have, you're in a weakened immune system, and they're coming in. And I know the frontline staff is bending over backwards to make it work, but it's a dollars and cents thing, right? So they froze the amount of money going to the hospitals for 4 years. I know that there's all kinds of promises being made now by the Liberals, but they have a majority government. They can do whatever they want, basically.
Yeah.
They had 15 years to fix it. They didn't fix it. It's always the eve of an election where they show up and they're like, oh, we make all these promises and just wait what's going to happen once we're elected. And I think people are fed up with that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
My thing on that is always, you need someone who cares about you all year long and not the night before prom.
Absolutely.
Right?
No kidding. Absolutely, yes. I like that. What do you think is one of the most common drivers to get people to create that change in the city? So you get elected. Like, what are some of the drivers you're going to need to impact people? Like, you see with Liberal government, people are fed up. Like, what are going to be some of the primary actors you'll need to get people moving, saying, hey, this is what we got to do. This is to create the change.
I think that you have politically and for a lot of things, you have these really strong, like, far right, far left opinions, like these goalpost opinions, and not enough people talking in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? I have friends who are conservative. They think I'm crazy for being a Democrat and stuff. But we have open conversation about stuff, and they have really legitimate concerns, and they really want life to be better, and they really want, and that's our common groundwork to start from. And I think my background in safety, and I've been representing workers for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think that's you come in the room and you flip the table over and you pound the table and stuff. I wouldn't be doing that for 15 years if that was my style, right?
Absolutely.
You have to be effective at understanding, for my workplace, what management's goals are, what their values are, what's important to them, where they can move, where they can't move, where that fits in with what the workers are doing, and negotiating on where we can all win on this, right? So a good example for our workplace is mental health, right?
Super important.
We're all in mental health. Well, it's a priority for everybody. It's a priority because it's good for people. It's a priority because it's one of your biggest costs, if not the biggest cost to your business. It's just the right thing to do all around. So, I'm on a working group for mental health at Valley, and I think we're 2 or 3 steps ahead of other companies because other companies have come to us and said, how'd you get here, right?
Absolutely.
So we're at a workplace now where, when you think of mining and stuff, it's basically rub dirt in it and keep going.
Exactly.
So we have people who, by the end of, I believe, this year, everyone will be trained in mental health awareness, which is a 1 hour kind of, if you see someone in distress, what do you do? How do you identify it? How can you get them to help? And then everyone from a supervisor and a health and safety committee member up is eventually going to be trained in mental health first aid, which is a 2-day course. So it's a matter of the timing. It isn't just that they don't want to do it. It's just that it's 2 days of planning and getting going through it. And the people to buy in for that is like it's booked months ahead.
Oh wow!
People want to get into it, want to get involved. You know, it's probably going to get to the point where we'll have to train more people to be, because you have to be certified through the province to do the training, right? But you know, mental health is something that we all agree on. So when I go to the company and I say I have some ideas about how we can help with mental health, right? It makes sense to them, it makes sense to us, and it's a good way to work together. And I think that transfers over to a conversation in politics, right? So, you know, when someone talks about ring of fire and I'm going to drive the bulldozer up there and I'm going to do it myself, you're never going to drive a bulldozer. There's negotiations you have to make. You have to understand the people who live in the area and what they want. It's no different than when Toronto talks about what they're going to do in Sudbury, and everyone in Sudbury's like, no, that's not how it works here. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think it's a valuable skill to have, to be able to understand someone else's point of view and really understand, not just nod your head and say, yeah, well, this is what we're doing and pound the table. It's just to say, here's how we can both win. Here's what I need. Here's what you need. Here's the boundaries. How do we get from here to there, stay within the boundaries, and both win?
Okay. But going off of this, so the second question I was going to ask you, so talking about the workplace, I'm very fascinated about, you know, Valet. It's a big company trying to get many people moving in the same direction. Same thing with politics. You're trying to get people moving in the same direction. Talk about the importance of having a high EQ, emotional intelligence, being able to relate to people so that you can get their emotional drivers, but also, you know, get them on a logical sense to say, hey, this is a great solution.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that people you want to understand each other, you want to hear each other and know, you know, what your values are so you can have that shared value on it. So the days of, you know, when I was a kid, it kind of faded out when I was a kid. Probably my parents' days of like, you know, you're going on a trip and your parents were like, get in the car. I'll tell you when we get there, right? Yeah. And that changed with my generation, where they would tell you like, at least you know some advance notice, so you pack a bathing suit or something. Yeah. But now, like you know, with the newer generation, there's a lot more of, we're going on vacation. You want to go skiing, you want to go somewhere warm. And there's a lot more of that conversation going around, which I think is healthier, totally, for people, right? And I think it's just we're evolving with the times. And not that nobody was like that before. It's just people are now more in tune of well, where do you want to go and eat? What do you like to eat? True, right? Yeah. So, like, I love sushi. My wife doesn't. So I plan out, like, my son and I are going to, my son and I go to Rose Apple. Exactly, right? Yeah. And my wife and I go out, we'll go to, like, you know, the keg, or, right? Something else. Absolutely. But it's just understanding that instead of just saying, well, 3 of us like sushi, so Pam, you're coming.
Exactly. No, I like that. It's so true, and that is it. Kind of, we have so many more options in this generation. And for myself, being a millennial, you know, it creates confusion. But at the same time, if you're quick at making those decisions, you're like, well, let's kind of find a middle ground. You know, find something, or you know, you go to do sushi, and then you take your wife out somewhere else after. Something like that, right? Yeah. So I want to talk to you. I want to transition this into. So we're talking about kids. We're talking about, you know, coming to decisions. Talk about the importance of community involvement, especially how you said, you know, you didn't grow up in the best of conditions, and then, you know, getting involved in the community, I think. So I always use the same analogy. Cambridge went on strike or whatever. I'm like, those students should be volunteering. If you don't have a job, you can't find a job, go volunteer. Right. Get in the community, get engaged, get moving. Talk about the importance of, you know, getting involved. I mean, that everyone wants to have a say, but then people aren't, you know, moving the ball kind of thing.
So part of getting involved is difficult because with the rise of precarious work and these short-term contract jobs, they don't have a lot of freedom, or they can't commit to every Tuesday I'll do something, and that becomes harder for a lot of people. I got involved with United Way, well, back when I started working actually at Valet or Ingle back then, and basically what happened is they have a whole presentation with like a video and stuff, and you have these cards to fill out, and the guy beside me goes, you put $2 right there, that's what we all do. Right, and that was the pitch, right? Because there's a lot of strength with like a coworker up here telling you this is what we, you know, this is the team we like or whatever, right? So, so coming from a background where, you know, we had to rely on charity, we had to, you know, I shopped at secondhand stores and stuff and all that. I know how valuable it is firsthand. So once I had a job with decent wages and a little extra money in my pocket, I knew it was important to give back. So, you know, that $2 went to $5, and then eventually one point I said, look, I'm going to give an hour of my pay to United Way every month. That's great. And I just tried it the first year, and you don't notice, right? I'm fortunate to be in a position where I didn't notice. So, you know, if we negotiate a raise or something, then we got a raise, and it just became a constant thing. And then in the workplace, the following year, they needed people to do the presentations and stuff. So I volunteered for that, and I've been doing that ever since. And then about 5 years ago, I joined the board for United Way.
That's huge.
And it was a real, this wasn't planning or anything. It was just like, it's a charity I believe in, and I wanted to help out. And then, so part of I'm president of Labor Council, was also a volunteer role, and that allows me a position on the board. And I was really excited about getting on the board, because I've always liked United Way. And it's just coincidence, right? It could be any charity at the time. And I think, if you have the wherewithal, if you have time or money or whatever, it's important to give to charities because of the valuable work they do, right? They're always shoestring budget. And so, it came at a time where we transitioned from, we were just starting as United Way. Sudbury was expanding and helping United Way North Bay start to grow. And then we've expanded into Northeast Ontario, so Timmins, Cap, and those areas.
Yeah.
During United Way, basically what's happening is their executive director was retiring, and nobody was picking up the ball on it, and we said, look, we could probably take this on centrally and have these different areas, grow them as their own, because we've seen the value that United Way's been here for just over 30 years, and the value they've had in helping a lot of these small organizations stay, doing the valuable work that they do. So. It's always been something that's important to me, that you volunteer to give back somehow, because there are people who are counting on you. There's people who are having a hard time and really, really struggling. And one of the benefits of my daughter being in dance is that I end up downtown. She's at Dance Evolution, so around 5:30 every day I'm dropping her off, and she's there for 3 or 4 hours. So I can either watch her dance, right, and I have in the past, or I can go volunteer for a couple of hours, and that's kind of what I did. Is I got 2 or 3 hours to kill, and honestly, you put your hand up and say, I want to volunteer somewhere. There is a lot of places that will take that.
It's so true. None of people know that. You know what I mean? And I think some of the protocol is that people want to get first before they give, and I'm just saying, they don't see the return. Like, well, if I volunteer, you know what I mean? I think we got to go be out in the community more and not expect anything in return. Yeah. And that's basically what I was trying to point out, is that a lot of time I've seen with students in general that they're looking for a return first. I'm like, guys, just get out there. It'll pay dividends. You'll meet tons of people. You'll get out there, and then you see return in terms of some of the people you're helping. I really respect your opinion on that, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like that's a very noble thing. You don't see as much. I wish there was more people going out in the community, dropping your daughter off a dance, and then you watch it for a bit, then you go volunteer.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to work for free anymore, right?
Right.
And that's one of those things that's trying to get people involved, and then if we come together for a common good, obviously we get a good result on it. One of the other things I want to ask you, how difficult is it for you, from a marketing standpoint, like kind of marketing yourself, going out door to door, like how difficult is that? How's your response like with people? I mean, you're a nice guy, right? So
yeah.
And then they come in, they're like, oh, he's knocking door to door. What's, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's okay.
I was actually, I'm laughing because I was joking today that someone was introducing me, and I said, I don't have the benefit of 2 years of scandal for people to learn my names, right? Because I'm relatively, my mom likes me, but not everybody knows me, right? Yeah. So you do have to explain who you are, and you end up with sort of an elevator pitch of, here's my background. I work in health and safety, and I'm about people. I'm a people first sort of guy, and I'm a hard worker, and I really I have a really crazy strong work ethic. My day starts, my alarm goes off at 5. I'm at work by 6. I work 6 to 2:30. I come home. Just because the way our schedules work, I make supper for my wife and kids, and then I'm out the door with my daughter to dance, and then I volunteer, and then I'm back home around 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. Wow. And that's a regular schedule for me, and I like that pace, right? I feel like it's a fulfilling sort of life, and that's kind of that's my promise when elected, right? I'm not gonna. There's a lot of people saying when elected I'm going to work really hard, and I was thinking to myself, you wouldn't go to a garage and said, if you bring your car here, then I'll be the best mechanic.
Exactly.
You go to the best mechanic to start off with, right? So my thing is that when elected, I'm going to work hard. I already work hard. It's just I won't be at valet for 8 hours a day, so I can focus exclusively on the community and the stuff that drives me, right? I've lived here my whole life. I love the city. I really do. It sounds like a pitch, but there's something about Sudbury that's very unique, especially with the regreening. We have all these trails all over the place. You can wander around. You can escape city life. Well, even where we are, we're basically downtown, but 10 minutes that way, you can walk that right through the bush. Yeah. And those places are all over the place. If you needed to, you could really walk from one end of the city to the other, but it's not so small that everybody knows what you had for breakfast that day.
So true, yeah.
You know what I mean? You still meet new people you haven't met before. So I enjoy all of that. It's a great city. In terms of marketing, because not a lot of people know who I am, I think that social media is a great boon, right? Because
Absolutely.
you get to share your links and you get to let people know what you're up to and what's happening. So people who follow me on. And I'm relatively new the last year or so on Twitter, but like on Facebook, I've been on there for years.
Yeah,
right? So,
absolutely.
And I don't have anything to hide, right? So go back and look at all
Exactly,
the stuff that I've been involved with. Right?
He was knocking doors then too.
It'll be weird because there'll be some political stuff and there'll be me walking my dog. But
Exactly, yeah. No, absolutely.
But
no, I like that.
I think that a lot of times, I think people are tired of politicians who are just polished and all they ever do is smile and hold babies and all they ever, you know what I mean? Like you need to have a life. And be a real person, right? And so I'm fortunate that I clean living and stuff, so I don't have any skeletons to hide.
No, that's great. And I mean, that's one of those things, everyone's looking for the next, that's what they want on the news rather than, oh, Jamie's out here in the hospital working for free. You know what I mean? They want the scandal stuff, and that's kind of a sad part of reality at some points.
Yeah.
But that was another point I wanted to make off that. You were saying that, expecting something, right? So you look at that, that's why I say with the volunteer work, you can't expect anything, and that's so important. Yeah. But to close this off, so Jamie, this is coming up soon. They say in politics the vital point is the last week before you get elected. What do you have to expect from this? Do you know what I mean? Do you think people are going to start taking jabs at you on the other side? How do you feel this is going to transition? I think it's important to ask that.
I honestly don't know. I think that Sudbury is very unique. I think that there'll be comments that are made that. Sometimes the truth is tough, right? So there's certain things that I think that people will say honestly about. We had an election scandal here, right? I don't feel like it's a cheap job. We did. We had one. It went to court. It went through, and apparently everything was fine. But a lot of people remember that happening, right? So I think that's kind of fair game. I don't feel like Sudbury's a city that, just my experience with politics, where people just randomly take cheap shots.
Yeah.
There's sort of the social justice keyboard warrior who will, trolley or whatever, and
Johnny 99,
yeah, that's par for the course, whatever. But for the most part, I find that people in politics, they care about certain things. So when they talk to you about I'm voting for this, they tell you why, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Or I'll knock on the door and they'll tell me I'm voting for a different party. I always have, my parents did or whatever. But I haven't had any experience where they're like never, and I get off my lawn and stuff. People are very friendly in Sudbury. It's a friendly town. And what was really interesting this year is I'm knocking on doors, people are telling me, I've never voted for the NDP before, but I hate her. I think that guy's crazy. So this is your shot, man.
There it is, yeah, prove it right. Yeah.
It's a weird, I'm going to give you the ball, see what you can do with it.
Absolutely.
Because I think people are really fed up with the Liberals and what's going on. It's hard to believe that after Dalton McGuinty, that we'd be thinking, oh, those were the good old days when the Dalton McGuinty scandals were here, right? Because it seems to have gotten worse. And Ford seems to be a love him, hate him sort of situation. What I find baffling with Ford is, the Conservatives are supposed to be the business party. He's out there making promises and saying he's going to do all kinds of stuff, and he's going to save $6 billion, but he's not going to have the cap and trade carbon tax. He's not going to, and he has no business plan. And I worked with a lot of businesses. My mom had a small business. My in-laws had a small business. Valley's a multi-million-dollar business. I've never heard of a business plan based on trust me. Right? You have no plan spelled out, and you're saying, don't worry, we're not going to lose. You won't lose any jobs, and I'll save the money. And then the only thing I've heard so far is we're going to find inefficiencies. We're going to find pennies on the dollar everywhere. I'm like, there are not that many pennies. We'd all be billionaires if you could find that many pennies. So I struggle with that. I think the final days of the campaign it's the push all the way through, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
I think that the writ's going to drop this week, which means the election's going to officially start. Even though we've all been out talking and putting up signs and shaking hands with people and stuff, but it'll come out. You'll see the signs showing up through the city. That brings a lot more people focused in because they're so busy, right? They're so stretched with everything that's going on as it is that the focus will be more on the election. There'll be more discussion, debate, opinions coming into the newspapers and things like that. But I think for the most part, it's going to be fair and friendly, right? I have no intention of throwing mud or
no, 100%.
Slander or anything like that. It's not clean, and it's not how I do business in the first place, right? I'm big on clean business, right? Just if you can be honest and truthful about what you're doing, if you felt comfortable saying whatever you said in front of the person, then you sleep at night with a clear conscience, right? So
that's the thing. I think some people don't want the truth at some points, right? But you have to give them, like, my mentality with it is that provide people with solutions. You know, you can say, like, a lot of people come out, oh, I have all these credentials, I'm a doctor, and this. Well, what's your solution? You know, at the end of the day, and that's what you've done, Jamie. You come out, you're giving people solutions, and that's what the people need. It's like we can have all this fluff and all these different things, and I'm not saying anything, but at the end of the day, that's the main thing, right? Is what's the solution, and here it is. Yeah. Right, you know, any way we want to put it, and that's, I think, one of the best things. And even speaking with you, you can see you have a great point on lots of different things. And I'm interested to see how this plays out. It's always, you know, politics is a very fiery thing. A lot of people want to say, oh, no, there's no emotion, but there's a lot of emotion and things to see. People want change.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see that for you. I want you right off the bat right here, so people can follow this, right? We have this interview, but where can you find you on social media to keep intact, or if we want to make a donation, where can we find you online?
Yeah, so jamiewestndp.com is our webpage, and you can link to Facebook and everything from there, and our Facebook is Jamie West NDP, so just Jamie West NDP is the easiest way to remember everything.
I think you've done a great job in the community, Jamie, and like you said, like people, you say, oh, people, it's your first run, people might not know you, but I mean, you can tell by your energy, your fire, you're ready to go. I'm excited to watch as it plays out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we need, you know, the slogan is change for the better, but we really do need change for the better. We need, like, our hospitals are in really rough shape. You know, we've been cutting back services, and we've been cutting back management. Now we're cutting into our frontline staff. We have to fix that. That's affecting our families, right? The same with the seniors care. They have this commitment. You know, our party made a commitment recently, 4 hours for senior care. They were looking at 6 minutes per person, right? So they had a whole thing going on social media where they were saying, can you get yourself ready in 6 minutes, shave, shower? So imagine if you're elderly and you have arthritis and, you know, those kind of quirks and stuff, or, you know, just disoriented because you just woke up, or dementia or whatever else, trying to get another person ready in 6 minutes, it's unachievable, and you can't set these metrics that can't be met, right? And what happens with those elder care things is, I was in North Bay, they had a presentation about Northern Care in North Bay, and they were talking about these families that basically every day come to these old age homes to help their parents. They're missing their kids' birthday parties. Wow. They're missing, and because they have their parents, and we would do it for our parents too, right? Like but that isn't a solution. That's a stopgap, and that's not why we pay taxes. That's not what we want government for, right? We expect fundamentally health care, elder care. I think our pharmacare platform, it's a real pharmacare. I don't understand this OHIP Plus where you have coverage till you're 25 and then you don't again till you're 65. That's 40 years of your life without pharmacare coverage. How is that good for average people? Even the child care. The NDP platform for child care is if you make under $40,000 a year, you have free child care. If you make over that, it's $12 a day, so it's a flat rate, right? You can plan for that. It makes sense. The one that's been unrolled recently was, well, when your children are 2.5 years old, until they start school, there'll be free child care. Well, you have parental leave until your kids are 1, so what are you supposed to do from the time your kids are 1 to 2.5, right? That's not a solution for people who more and more need a dual income, right? Or at least want the option to be able to go back to work, where right now a lot of people, some people absolutely would love to stay home. My wife loves staying home with her kids as long as she could. But some people want to go back to the workforce, and it becomes a decision of, it doesn't make any sense. It's more expensive for me to go to work than it is to stay home with the kids, right? And you can argue it's better to stay home with your kids anyways, but there are people who want to go to work. They want to, you know, either want to or need to because of economical reasons. And that's what government's for, to make life easier for families, not more difficult.
Well, I think that's a huge point even to end on that. I think, like I said, Jamie, you've got some great insight, and I'm very excited to see that play out. You've done a great job in the community, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, man.
Thank you very much, my friend.
This was fun.
It's always good. Ladies and gentlemen, check out Jamie West online.